Day 99, Arlington National Cemetery. So I kept on telling you how even though it was very cold, I was fine sleeping in the car. And the night before at the campground, I went to the ranger station and asked them what the temperature is like to be at night. And they told me, according to the county forecast, it's supposed to be 28. And I was like, I can do that. I did that or around that. I don't know how cold it was, but 28 it definitely was not. I do not remember ever in my life being so cold. I woke up in the middle of the night and I pulled on sweatpants and a sweatshirt and a hat and a scarf and a winter jacket, and I was still freezing, and I woke up in the morning like literally chilled to the bone. And it was very nice to snap pictures of frost on the grass and on the leaves, but I have never experienced cold like this, and I don't know how people survive it. So I was moving on, and after a drive through the beautiful Skyline Drive, and again you stop at every pull out and you take pictures of the views because they're simply never ending. But less than 2 hours later, you are in Washington, D.C. And to my surprise, driving through Virginia, I realized that it was a Confederate state during the Civil War. And I kept on thinking about Abraham Lincoln and what balls did he have to start a freaking war when his own capital was like literally bordered by an enemy state. So my next stop was Arlington National Cemetery, and I've been wanting to visit it for quite some time, not just because you see it in so many movies, and not just because I have a thing for cemeteries, but because there are a couple of people there that, funny as it may seem, I would like to pay my respects to. And so I went to see the grave of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and oh my God, if she had only known what is going now with Roe versus Wade and other things, she's probably spinning in her grave. And you see the grave of JFK and Jackie and their kids. I didn't realize they had another baby that died very shortly after birth, besides the son that they lost when JFK was already president. And you see these rows and rows of white markers, and each one represents a life not lived fully, a life that was cut short. And it kind of puts you in a very reflective mood. And then I came across a thing that completely blew my mind. So when you are in the cemetery, you look up the hill and there is this beautiful house standing there. And once you get up to it and you take the tour, you realize that the house belonged to Robert Lee, that very Robert Lee who was the commander of the Confederate Army. And he actually was offered by Lincoln to take command of the Union Army. And he agonizingly deliberated for a couple of days, and in the end he refused because he believed it would be going against what he understood to be the Constitution and the good of the country. So he left for war. And his wife, Martha, who was adopted granddaughter of George Washington, realized that the house is bound to be captured by the Union Army pretty soon. So she and the family of her trusted slaves packed up the most precious things in the household, which were all kinds of George Washington memorabilia, and fled. And soon after, the house was captured and it was looted and it was ransacked. And to spite Robert Lee, the Union soldiers started burying their dead literally in his backyard. And this is where the first tomb of a known soldier stands, dating back all the way to the Civil War. Another thing I didn't realize was that the Confederate soldiers, after the war was over, were disenfranchised. They lost their right to vote and to hold office, to run for office, and a whole bunch of other things. But when you stand in front of the house, you realize how strategically located it was. I mean, you literally see all the way down National Mall up to the Capitol building, and you see the Pentagon right there. So anyway, that was quite an eye-opening experience. And then another amazing thing happened to me there. I wanted to see the tomb of the unknown soldier. And once I walked up to it, there were a bunch of soldiers and policemen that said we cannot go in because there is a funeral taking place. And they asked us to wait. So I'm waiting, and this funeral looks to be something like a big deal. And then I realized, oh my God, that is the funeral of Colin Powell. So we got to see the whole procession, and they asked not to take pictures, because that was a request of the family. And that's amazing. Once you cannot take a picture, you become so intent on memorizing every single detail. So there was a marching guard from the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and two other things that I didn't recognize, and then the band, and then the horses pull the carriage with a flag draped casket. But the most touching and the most heartbreaking thing was something called the riderless horse, which is there's a rider that's leading by the reins another horse, and the horse is saddled, and there are boots in the stirrups, and a sword fastened to the saddle. But the boots are actually turned with their toes facing backwards. And I thought that was so symbolic and so poignant. And after the procession passed us by, I saw the tomb of the unknown soldier and the changing of the guard. And then I went to see the memorial to the astronauts from the Space Shuttle Challenger and the Space Shuttle Columbia. Actually, there was a grave of the Challenger commander, so that was very touching. And then along the way, I also discovered that if they want to, spouses can also be buried in Arlington National Cemetery, and that there are officially approved symbols to note the religion of every fallen soldier. So you have these special markings for Protestants and Catholics and Baptists and Jews and Mormons, or the Latter-day Saints as they're called. And that was another interesting tidbit of information. So the visit to Arlington was an absolute must, and it was absolutely worth it. If you're ever around Washington, D.C., I highly suggest you go. It is a place for solemn reflection and for paying your respects to the people who lost their lives fighting in the wars that they were called up to serve in. And just makes you realize how many lives were lost, not always for any worthy cause or for a cause that turned out to be worthy decades or even a couple of years later. And we should always be very careful and a lot less gung-ho about starting wars and keeping up wars, because the cost is tremendous.